I'm not your coach or therapist, but my assignment would be to have bad sex only for a period of time. Like, try to fail.
Welcome to Mistakes Were Made, a podcast about non-monogamy for messy people like us. I'm Sarah. I'm a queer, non-monogamous therapist, parent, and writer. And I'm also committed to breaking sex down to an atomized level that makes it extra sexy.
And I'm her husband and co-host, Alex. I would say I'm a newly minted bisexual. And
Look out, world.
I think it's sexy when you overanalyze things, Sarah.
Thank God.
Oh, cute. I'm Jessica, resident monogamist here recording. And I didn't come up with a clever joke, so I'm just going to be here making sure you all sound beautiful.
Thanks, Jess. And today we're really excited to have Calvin Burnap as our guest. Calvin is a licensed therapist, relationship coach, and meditation teacher in training at Spirit Rock, which is an insight meditation center in California, right?
Yeah.
Find him at calvinburnap.com and thecrushcoach.com, and we'll have both of those websites in the notes as well. Calvin's work as a therapist, conflict facilitator, relationship coach, and Dharma practitioner is guided by his connection to resistance movements working for liberation for all beings. And there is this quote here, fall in love with life, bringing your dreams and actions into alignment for more pleasurable connections. I love that.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks for being here,
Thanks,
Calvin.
Alex. Thanks for having me. Excited.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, so just right out the gate, a crush coach.
Yeah, thanks for reading that bio line. That's actually from my Instagram.
Okay.
And the idea to be a crush coach came about because I wanted to be able to talk about relationships and like people's crushes and help people connect where they are to where they want to be through actionable items. And over the years, it's evolved more into like falling in love with life, just that orientation towards cultivating desire and interest for all things, including love and relationships, romance and sex, and not exclusive of other parts of the desire spectrum.
Yeah.
So that's where the falling in love with life comes into play.
So you can crush on people and you can also crush on other things in life.
Yeah, like if you've ever noticed, like when you're in a state of mind where things are beautiful to you, or you can find pleasure in lots of things, there's just a propensity or openness to also falling in love with people, whether or not they fall into the like dateable category or not. There's just sort of an aliveness that can happen.
Yeah. That's interesting. When I first read that, I was kind of thinking about it from the perspective of like almost like a problem to be solved. Like I have a crush on this person and like how am I going to get that person? So it's interesting to hear you like reframe it more around just like accepting what's coming to you sort of.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when I first started, it was mostly oriented towards people who had a crush and wanted to make a connection. And then I started hearing from a lot of people who were like, what if you're somebody who can't have a crush, you don't find people interesting in that way, and there's a missing element, desire for connection or avoidance of connection. So that's why I opened it up a little bit more. Plus I wanted to talk about spirituality. I wanted to talk about other kinds of relationships that are outside the romance sex spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting too. I was thinking about that concept of aliveness as it connects to what it feels like to have a crush. And you were saying, Alex, that you're imagining people wanted to resolve the feeling of having your crush, right? Because kind of inherent in having a crush is like tension.
Yeah,
There's
anxiety.
Like anxious
like,
tension.
Do they like me? Yeah.
That reframe is really, as someone who experiences a lot of anxiety and tension, actually is kind of like a regular part of my life. It's interesting to reframe that as a kind of aliveness. That in fact, like resolving those things is not necessarily the goal, but it's maybe experiencing them more fully.
It makes me think of in the beginning of Bell Hook's book, All About Love. And other people share this concept, but it's basically about when you sort of develop a crush or interest in someone else, it's actually a reflection of your own lovability. Like you're seeing yourself through the other person's, the way you hope they might see you. And so that's been something that I've really worked with since I was in my early 20s, just like that concept of knowing the crush is a projection of what I hope to see in myself. I'm falling in love with who I am, newly through this person's eyes, who I admire.
Yeah, that's so lovely. And like the idea that they see value in you, like helps you see value in yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, that's one of my early crush coach ideas, is to save some for yourself, like to not give it all away. Cause in my early relationships, I was like giving it away. You know, I'd be like making notes and drawings, and I'd be like, I'm thinking about you. And over the years, I've saved more of that for myself and my friends to put that really cool tension and energy into other parts of my life to kind of bolster my home space or my friendships in special ways that I used to just like, there was like a torrent of energy between me and my crush, you know?
Well, and that probably makes you more compelling to the crush too.
Yes, I do have a tendency towards being avoidant and slightly aloof.
You're like, strategically, it also works.
It's my attachment style, I swear.
What can I do?
Right.
I mean, it's interesting thinking about that aliveness and the sort of life force. I was actually talking to a really good friend who's visiting when we were in from out of town. And we were talking about, like, how do you decide what relationships that you grow in what direction, and where you sort of put that energy. And he was like, it's life force, and you want to be able to direct it lots of places. You want to be able to make choices with it. And I think about that a lot in terms of being creative and in terms of being politically engaged. Like the feelings that I have towards making things and the feelings that I have towards like radical politics feel connected to what it feels like to be in love, what it feels like to have a crush. And so thinking about diversifying in that direction too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that makes me think about just like that question that comes up a lot on this podcast is polyamory and multiple relationships, like, can that be a distraction from the other things that you're sort of doing in your life or your other priorities? Which it certainly, I think it can be for me sometimes, just like, the sort of like maintenance of these relationships and the like searching out new ones, if that is something that is like potentially like endless.
I mean, I think that is only if, and maybe this like kind of segues into some of what we'll be talking about today, if you feel like the only place where you get to feel alive, where you get to have that kind of like compelling projection of yourself, cycled back to you, where you get to feel excited about things is in love and sex.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where, at least in moments in my life where it's felt like overweighted in that direction, it's sometimes because I'm not feeling that in my life in general. And I just kind of get like funneled into that space because I'm like, maybe I'll find it here, that aliveness or that love or that reflection that I'm looking for.
I think that's a lot of our dominant culture. It's sort of like the price of admission is you have to have a date to do a lot of things, or to at least feel comfortable, right? You're supposed to have a date to go to dinner, to see a movie, family event, work event. It's like you're supposed to have somebody with you. That's like, you've made it. So
yeah.
I don't, that's dominant culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How does that apply with polyamory? I mean, like in that sense, we do have a date. We have more than one date. We have multiple dates, and still sometimes it doesn't feel like enough. We're still not like getting that feeling of having arrived in that place of being, I don't know.
That, I feel like that's a huge question. And
well, that's why I brought you on here, because I knew you would be able to answer.
I'm
Calvin.
here to answer that question. Sorry. I mean, for me, this touches in, I'm interested in mindfulness, meditation, and community building, transformation. And so like that tension you talked about right there of, what if you have multiple partners and you still have a craving for companionship and partnership that isn't quite met? And it's like that debate of nurture versus nature. Is it inside of me or outside of me? And to me, the answer is always both. So if it's like I'm doing a lot of effort on the outside of me to give myself satisfaction inside and it's not quite hitting the mark, I might want to flip it around and do more of the internal work. So there isn't one answer. Like if someone only does internal work, probably not going to get to where they want to go. But if someone only does external seeking, probably also not going to bring them the deep satisfaction that they deserve and want.
Yeah. And it reminds me of this, a quote that I use a lot from dance, because I have a background as a dancer, that balance is a movement. That in fact, like, we aren't arriving somewhere that's balanced, but we're like constantly engaged in a bunch of like responses and corrections, micro and macro sometimes to find it.
It also, this is a sort of, life seems like it's repeating all the time, and we're visiting the same block over and over again, maybe even walking around the same block constantly. And I'm like, oh, I'm doing this again. But that's not actually how time works. It's, of course, a spiral, and we're never actually repeating things. So sometimes we do a little bit of external seeking. We get to a new place, and then we do a little internal work. We get to a new place, and then we go back to the external seeking, and it hits slightly different. And so just this constant evolution and unfolding in a spiral shape is more resonant for me. So can sort of drop the self-judgment about like, oh, look at me again. I'm on the apps.
Yeah.
It's
Back on
2
my
a.m.
bullshit.
Back on my bullshit at 2
I'm on my
a.m.
bullshit. One spiral out.
Boy, was I on my bullshit at 2 a.m. this morning. I really was.
Yeah. Well, and this is where mindfulness, I think, comes in for me. That's so important. Mindfulness is not just attention to something. It's attention to something with the intention to care about it. So a caring, loving, benevolent attention on what is happening right now. So if I was bringing, if I just brought awareness to my 2 a.m. app use, I might be judgmental because, I have judgments in my mind. Whereas if I'm bringing mindfulness, I'm bringing awareness with the intention to care about myself. Like an inquiry like, oh, what's it like for you to be up at 2 a.m.? You have to wake up at 8 and you're texting a stranger. How's that feel? Just a curiosity.
Yeah. It's so hard for me to not engage with that without like self-judgment being involved. Like, how does it feel? It feels like I'm a piece of shit.
Oh, hello. Yeah. 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 Well, then we can be kind to that part that's like, I'm a piece of shit. It's like, oh, I'm the best piece of shit in this room.
You're such a cute little piece of shit.
Yeah.
Okay, but you guys said that I was told we were gonna be talking about sex on this episode of the podcast.
We were, but in like a metaphysical way.
Yeah, all right. But it wasn't our entry point that we had been talking about doing an episode about like the sort of idea of good sex or like maybe the myth of that. And then we did that episode, and I think maybe you guys had talked about it before we did the episode, but definitely when we did that episode, we ended up talking about like the tropes of straight sex usually, or we're talking about like the dynamics between men and women. And then we were just sort of like, yeah, obviously this does not cover every person's relationship experiences, but we kind of just punted a lot of that stuff down the road. And here we are, hopefully down that road, hopefully talking more about queer sex.
I'm excited to be here to talk about sex. Yeah, that's what Sarah got me on the podcast for.
I like how I lured you in with the promise that we would talk about sex, but mostly we're just talking about mindfulness and therapeutic concepts.
It'll all come back together.
So Calvin, I'm curious to talk to you about some of your work with clients around like building confidence in sex and sexual compatibility and authentic sexual experiences. How does that show up in your work?
Yeah, so I work in Seattle with clients who are therapy clients, like couples. And then I also do coaching outside of the city, outside of Washington, for people who are either coming out of a relationship, wanting to have a different kind of relationship or a different kind of relationship to relationships. And yeah, you mentioned building confidence in the bedroom or outside the bedroom for that matter. So that's a topic that is really near and dear to me. It's fun to think about how to support people to show up authentically in their lives, not just the way I do things, but that is aligned with how they want to see their home life and community life, family life.
And what do you feel like what are common things that people come to you with, like, that they're struggling about in regards to sex?
I think with regards to sex, it's sort of like we do a lot of personal growth work in our adolescence and early adulthood. And it just continues as we get older. The layers get deeper and more interesting. And I think the kind of sex that I was having in my 20s was largely unconscious, if you know what I mean. I was just kind of like going through the motions, learning about what I liked, trying things out. And by the time I got to my 30s, I was sort of like my self-awareness and skills had gotten to a certain level, and sex itself, my relationship to sex and partners hadn't leveled up to that kind of communication skills, self-awareness, and honesty around what I want and what I want to do.
What do you think it was that like kept that from developing as like everything else in your life was developing?
Yeah, I think like shame, cultural conditioning. I mean, also being queer and trans, like this is, I don't know how much to get into this on the podcast, but like I was like a teenage lesbian, and then I came out as trans when I was about 20, and I started transitioning. And then I had never been with men before that, and I was very embarrassed. Like you could call it internalized homophobia.
Mm-hmm.
But I was shocked to have it because I'd been a teenage, like, just like, fuck you, I'm gay.
Right. Like very sex posy kind of.
Yeah. And like I'd been very enculturated by like 90s lesbian separatism and, all that stuff. And, women rule, and I won't say the other part, but like,
thank you.
Because I don't feel that way anymore. Actually, that was really harmful to me. I had to unlearn that stuff. And, that's a whole other podcast episode about that. But like coming into my late 20s, just being like, okay, I actually like need to cultivate my relationships to men. I need to like love and accept myself in these parts. And so I just like getting to a certain point of like, I haven't quite made it, and realizing I haven't quite liberated myself from some of these conditions and causes from childhood. Yeah.
Dude, same. I think even having a completely different experience, the challenge of in a like culture that is, or like subculture that are very like trying to engage with patriarchy, it's like very hard to like find the compassion for men and the male experience inside of that, when there's always like a lot to sort of critique around like the power that men have and how they wield it.
Yeah.
But you can't really like grow around that past a certain point if you're just kind of going, yeah, men suck, and like if I'm a man, I kind of suck, and if the best I could do is just like sort of admit that, right? That's like, there's got to be something beyond that, right?
I was sitting at a poolside in Guerneville, California. It's a nice gay resort town. And I was sitting next to this gentleman, and he told me his story about being bi. He'd been mostly married to women. Now he was like never going to go back in the closet. But what he said is that he could connect to women emotionally, but not men. And my response to him was like, maybe just give it a little more time and give it some faith that men can connect with you emotionally, because you seem obviously like connective. Like, drop the cultural story that men are emotionally stunted or whatever the story is. I don't know, what kinds of conditioning each person has, but I definitely grew up with some of that idea, and that's gotten in my way of connecting,
Yeah. It's interesting. I was thinking about these ideas of sexual scripts and the ones that we're raised with and how they get in the way of having authentic experiences. And, in our last episode, Alex, so much of what we were talking about is having felt like we were just indoctrinated with certain types of scripts about sex between men and women, just monolithic, so intense.
They're like cliches from media and stuff like that. Yeah.
Cliches from media. And it's interesting, Calvin, to hear you say like, you also struggled with that, even though you had a really different experience and expression of sexuality and sex in your developmental years. I also think I Was a Teenage Lesbian could be the title of one of your memoirs, if you're looking.
Thank you. It's actually probably taken.
Oh, but you know what? They can't copyright titles.
Okay. I'll consider.
Yeah. Were you also a vampire? Because I Was a Teenage Lesbian vampire, probably.
No, but I'm on my way to becoming one in the future. Okay. Just the vampire part. Yep.
You're like, when I was a teenager in 1850. Sorry. I'm going to dial it back from that whole tangent.
No, that's great. Also another podcast. But I'm curious, so like one of the scripts that you feel like you were raised with that impacted gender, sex, and sexuality for you was this idea that men couldn't emotionally connect, that you couldn't you couldn't with them.
Well, I grew up in the 90s. I was born in the 80s. And so like girls rule, you know, or like girls rock, girls kick ass. I think I had a bumper sticker that said girls kick ass. You know, so I was raised on this like women's power, which I think is awesome. But there was also sort of like the butt of the joke in that too, and implied. It made me think of my dad would always be like, oh, you're going to give some old guy a really hard time when you grow up, you know, like that I would be sort of like I don't know what that is.
Huh. Like you wouldn't be like a complacent wife because of your feminism?
Yeah. And that I'd be running the show, or I'd be sort of like duping somebody, or like just like giving them a hard time.
That's very like 90s feminism cliche,
right?
too. I feel like, yeah, she's just a pain in the ass.
Kind of. Yeah.
And there's no hope for relationships that are reciprocal and peers and like respectful and authentic. Yeah.
Yeah. That might be even kind of boring.
That's kind of boring. Yeah. Right. Interesting.
But, not to get too much in the meditation stuff, but just to say, because this is a transformational thought to me, boring itself is an aversion to the peaceful. So like boring, feeling bored is like, I hate peacefulness, because I like boring is when there's nothing to do. It's so boring, right? That is a tension that keeps me away from enjoying the tranquil, peaceful state. So as I get older and hopefully more wise, I see that when I feel like something's boring, it's because I want more excitement, and I'm unwilling to just ease into the peaceful, tranquil moment that's actually neutral and nice, connected, basic, you know?
Yeah. Replenishing even, or like a baseline experience. I think about that a lot with, well, myself, having kids, other aspects of my life, where it's just like being in that moment with myself seems too difficult. And I think that that's sometimes what boring, that's like the shorthand where I'm like, I'm bored. Actually, what I'm saying is there's something complicated here I don't want to experience internally, usually. And so I want out of it. I want a distraction. I want something else.
Yeah. You know? Pick up your phone, talk to someone new, all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I have a couple of like sort of like grounding questions. Maybe I'm not sure if the first one is like too personal, but could you, if you're up for it, talk about like how you went from dating women and then transitioning and then dating men, and like what that shift was like?
Totally. God, we're going back into the ages. But yeah, so I was out when I was like 14 or 15 years old. And I had my first girlfriend when I was about 15 and a half, and we dated for a couple years. I had a series of other relationships from there through college. And starting transition meant for me getting a new name, taking hormones, and like sort of like socially shifting how people see me. And in that, I think partly about just getting more comfortable with myself meant opening up, kind of like taking the blinders off about what I could do. I mean, the scripts about heterosexual sex, I think, were a huge part of my high school sexuality. You know, who was the top and who was the bottom, or who was the, you know, butch in those relationships. So I was using a lot of those scripts about who's supposed to satisfy who and stuff like that. So being trans and having this new expression of my identity, and like opening to myself as a sexual person really opened my eyes to like other kinds of sexuality that appealed to me. But that was when I was like 22 years old, and I just like wasn't ready for that. And there weren't dating apps, you know. I was going to school in Bellingham. I wasn't in the bigger city, you know. And I didn't know a lot of trans guys who were also attracted to men openly. It was a lot like what I, you know, that I can only have, I'm like date women, but I hook up with men on the side. That was the most common arrangement. And so like that wasn't, my relationship skills weren't up to snuff to manage that in my early 20s. So I ended up having a lot of relationships where like on the side, we both might hook up with people, but it was very messy. These are my early open relationship messes.
And those were usually with women.
Yeah. As my primary date. And then I'd have side things, for better or worse.
Yeah.
And then in my later 20s, I started a long-term relationship with my partner. Now we can call him String Bean. That's his nickname.
I love that.
And when I got into that relationship, it was my first or second, but long-term relationship with somebody who is also a guy. And that was a new thing for me. At that point, finally with him, I was like ready to do that. But I had just barely started before that. I'd had a few really amazing people I dated for a very short period of time who were also he, him, or men identified. But I like kind of freaked out, in a classic internalized homophobic way, just like, I can't be seen like this.
Yeah, because you had never had that experience even earlier in your history. You had never dated men.
No,
Yeah.
and not only that, but like my friends, my queer, mostly women friends were like, ew, men. And I just didn't want to be like a stereotype, like, oh, you transition, now you like guys. But
okay, so is that a stereotype? I guess I wasn't aware of that being a stereotype.
That's one of the few things my dad has said to me about being trans over the years is like, oh, you're probably going to do this just like that, And I was like, no, I'm not. But here I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably if I had been more free in high school, I would have just been like bisexual, right? But I just lacked that kind of freedom and self-confidence, self-awareness. And so going through that journey helped me open up to those things.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And the other grounding question was just to ask about your client base, sort of like who do you typically kind of work with? Are your clients mostly queer couples, individuals? Are there straight cis people mixed in there too? Or what is it?
I'm open to all kinds of people. I don't do any targeted ads or filtering. If people want to work with me and it feels like a good match, I'm open to that. With that said, most of the people who want to work with me are queer and trans people, people of color. People come in individually. They come as couples, sometimes more than two. Also, parent-child dyads as well. I've had some work with bands, groups, which is very fun. Yeah. So all kinds of relationships.
Okay. And that's got to be part of the conflict resolution facilitation work too.
Exactly.
Where that intersects. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
On the piece about helping people explore and even change their relationship to sex, people who come to you and they're like, I feel frustrated with what my relationships look like or what sex feels like and looks like in my life. What are common frustrations you hear? And to kind of offer up where this question is coming from for me, in my work, often with queer populations and poly populations, one really common thing that will come up, there'll be desire differential inside a relationship is a really common one. I work with a lot of people who are queer, but they have internalized homophobia and experience kind of queer imposter syndrome and are don't know how to begin exploring their queerness physically and sexually. I think another common frustration that comes up for clients that I work with is a lot of performance anxiety, a lot of comparison, a lot of sense that literally everyone in the world is having beautiful, liberated, wonderful, and amazing sex, except for me. Or, everybody's bodies and skills are better than mine. So confidence and negative self-talk. Probably there are other things that would show up, but I would say those are the big three with the folks that I work with. And I was curious how it shows up with your clients.
I think a lot of the clients I work with are working on being comfortable in the presence of another person and feeling free to receive and give in the same moment. It's an incredible amount of baseline well-being plus self-awareness to be doing constantly in the moment, to be present, to breathe, to feel comfortable and at ease. It's taken me decades to feel the way I do today.
Yeah. That really resonates with me. I was just thinking why am I talking about my clients? One of the frustrations that I have.
I wasn't going to say
Yeah.
anything, but I was like, I've heard Sarah say this.
Like those three things that I've never experienced. But is that unconscious engagement with sex that you described versus like a more present embodied experience? I have realized recently like how common it is for me to like just want to figure out how I can get through sex and it be a good experience for me and everyone involved. You know, I'm just like, I just don't want this to be a disaster. I want this to be like a good thing that everybody can look back on, including me tomorrow. But I think that speaks to like how fraught it still feels to me and like how complex and how hard it is for me to like engage with that in the moment.
I want to bring in Esther Perel for her work around like what is sex. And she talks about this on her podcast. It's dependent on each person, what they think sex is. So it's like, what did you feel like you got at the end of sex that you were like, that was perfect. And so it depends on each person. So what you just said around like trying to figure out how to get through and make sure everybody had a good time. Like for some people, having sex means afterwards you feel closer to the person. So anything you do, whether it's like traditional sex or you actually take your pants off or not, if you feel connected at the end, whatever you did, maybe it's just walking around the block with your hands together and chatting, like that was successful. The other person I was thinking of when you were sharing is Betty Martin. She's a local practitioner. Cool. Yeah. And just her work around attuning to each other and holding each other and receiving and giving, you know, taking and offering, all of those elements. Her 3-minute exercise has been so instrumental with me and my clients to just become present to the micro movements as opposed to like this huge act that we're about to do, but actually like contact within our contact between our bodies, the whole body, you know, not just the genitals or not just, you know, hands and faces, but the whole like front and back, top and bottom of the body.
Yeah, we did an episode where we tried to dig into that a couple seasons ago, and I would say we did not do a perfect job, but it is such a useful resource, definitely. And like the pieces about like what you were saying a minute ago about like sort of simultaneously being engaged with giving and receiving, I think that especially like in man-woman dynamics, there's so much kind of there like already baked in those cultural scripts that like disentangling them is really hard. And like, I think that 3-minute exercise, like part of what I really like about it is it helping you identify like which is which, like you totally separate them so that then maybe you can bring them back together. But if you never like think about, is this for me or is this for you? And am I giving or am I receiving? Like all of that is just this crazy jumble that is like very hard to navigate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And coming to some awareness about it, having some language for it can help. I've seen for myself and my clients settle the system enough that you could actually be present with another human being. And then that's when interesting, fun things can happen, when you can actually be relaxed or more relaxed, be open, at least more open than before. And then you can start to create something new. I think, you know, when we talk about sort of typical client that comes in, it's like, I'm thinking of a couple who has some amount of like tension, and then they're like, we're not having sex. And I'm like, those two are connected, you know, like how's your grocery shop trip going? You know, you two come in, you're sitting like on the opposite ends of the couch and you're like facing away from each other. I'm like, yes, honey, we need to talk about how do you connect to each other, not just in the bedroom. Like it's a continuum. Sex is like on the continuum of all contact and connection. It's just one kind of contact and connection, but we need to work with all the different contact and connection. Like, how are you in bed? How do you wake up together? How do you eat together? Who does what? Who's doing what chores? Like, if you think that stuff isn't going to affect your sex life, you are in for a sore surprise.
What about the inverse of that? Like the idea that sex is symbolic of meaningful connection. And so if it's not happening or it's not happening like enough, I mean, I feel like I've had a lot of relationships where, especially like in poly relationships that are sort of like secondary, to use a problematic term, that becomes the thing that is like, well, we know that like if we're having sex, that's what makes this a real relationship. But
I know as soon as I said what I just said, I was like, well, what about people who are having amazing sex, but everything else is...
Right. Yeah, that too.
Is
Yeah.
also not an uncommon
I know.
experience. And I would say, if it's okay for you and I to talk about our dynamic here a little bit, I would say that it's a little more common that like we might be sort of falling apart in other sectors. And then sometimes, you know, like sex is a sector where I think you and I feel confident with each other and confident that we're going to have an experience that feels good to both of us. And so we'll kind of reach for that sometimes, even when everything else is a shit pile.
Yeah.
Because we're like, we know how to do this. We know how this feels good. You know,
That's really beautiful because you have a space in your relationship where you can play and connect. And then you can draw from that resource to other places. I mean, that can be true in any direction. But I think when people are coming in and they're like, we can't connect in sex and we're also not connecting in other places, it's like you have to figure out with that couple or whatever relationship dynamic they're in, like, is sex the best place to intervene, or is the daily communication and contact and physical intimacy the place to intervene? Everybody's different.
Right. Maybe it's like make dinner together first and figure that out.
Yeah. Or like sit with your head in the other person's lap and tell them about your day for 5 minutes and then take turns, you know, just like slow down.
Well, and then the wheel of consent, like that stuff could apply in that situation too, right? Like I'm like listening to you and this is like your time to share and for me to sort of like give my attention and vice versa.
Totally.
Like,
Yeah. String Bean and I took a course with Jenny Hayo, another local practitioner, and it was a Hakomi style relationship skills. And she had amazing little exercises for us. I think it was like an 8-week course, and every week we did something different. Like one of the exercises was mime to your partner using no words your life story for 10 minutes.
Whoa.
oh my God.
And then switch.
Fuck yes.
What is Fumi style?
Hakomi.
Hakomi. Okay.
You'd have to look it up. I don't
Okay. We'll look it up and put it in the show notes and I'll read the Wikipedia page.
All right.
One of the things that was coming up for me is, well, two. There is this old relationship adage that I think about a lot, and I don't know how I feel about it, and it just keeps popping into my head while we're talking. Fix the sex, fix the relationship. Have you all ever heard that? Interesting. Why do I know? Like, who was telling me that all the time? Fix
I
the
mean,
sex,
it seems like it makes sense that that would be a trope.
But it's kind of interesting to think about. And I was always like, that doesn't feel right because it like silos sex in a weird way and maybe overprivileges it. But at the same time, I kind of heard it in what you were saying. It's just we have to define what sex is in a much broader way.
Agreed. Yeah. Sex is a very broad topic. Yeah, exactly.
And that any kind of physical, intimate connection is part of that spectrum.
I would agree. And also sometimes people are like, because sex is so weighted and like desired in our culture, it's like you're supposed to be having it and you're supposed to be having good sex and you're supposed to have a lot of it and you're supposed to be satisfied with it. That's like a lot of pressure to have, right? So if you're in a room with a partner or more than one partner and someone touches you, you're like, that story means like, oh, they're touching me, maybe we'll have sex, as opposed to like, oh, I'm getting touched, that's nice. I mean, that's a little bit of a dramatization, of course, but it's as if everything we do in our lives is supposed to lead towards sex and orgasm, and if it's not, we've somehow failed. That's a huge setup.
Why do you think it's like that, Calvin? I mean, I was just thinking about how high the stakes are and how intense the cultural scripts are. I mean, the stakes are about our own value, about like meaning and purpose in our lives are like wrapped up in sex. And is it good? And are we good at it?
And is the chemistry in the relationship good? Another one?
Was thinking about how the way, if I were to like try and visualize the pressure that I sometimes feel during sex as like a marquee, it would be like, don't fail. Right? It's like, don't fail at sex because your like ability to connect with someone is going to be dependent on not failing at sex. Your like value is going to be dependent on not failing at sex. The possibility of like being rejected, vulnerability around rejection is dependent on that too. And it's like, holy shit, that's too intense.
I'm not your coach or therapist, but my assignment My assignment would be to have bad sex only for a period of time. Like, try to fail.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like end early, or like be really embarrassing and whiny and like needy or something. You know, I don't know the details of your.
Or like, don't come, or
Oh, absolutely don't come.
Don't, like-
accidentally come too soon. Whatever too
Absolutely
soon
don't
is,
come.
you know?
fail
Yeah.
to make others come, right?
Yeah, don't say anything when you're coming.
These are all good.
That
good
feels like
ideas.
a cool kink,
Like,
actually.
try to come without your partner knowing.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, all these
Yeah.
things that are so, like, not done. I mean, I think about also how much porn and TV affects, like, what we do. It's really, like, I think about, like, how did people have sex before mass media? How did they know what to do, you know?
Yeah. They just like figured it out. I
Must
guess.
have. I mean, here we are.
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue, I'm like not an anthropologist, but I am kind of interested in historical representations of like universal human themes. There's always been porn.
No, it's true.
But I mean, the extremity of porn now is really different.
instructive. You know?
They're like, this goes here, this can also go here.
They're just
Yeah.
like scratching on a cave wall. You should have seen what just happened.
Oh my gosh. Totally.
But that, I mean, it is really helpful and interesting to think about like how taboo it is to be like, oh, maybe the sex is going to be bad. Maybe I'm not going to overachieve at it. Maybe I'm going to like apply a totally different lens to this experience. It just reveals to me how controlling a lot of those scripts around sex really are.
I think, you know, because this episode is sort of, I think the theme is like good sex.
Sure.
One of the, I guess that, well, I would say that includes all consensual sex between people could be good sex. Like if we are approaching sex from the frame of play and connection, as long as I'm like open to those aspects, any sex is good, including ones that bring something difficult up or like not everybody gets exactly what they want. But, you know, earlier we were talking about like meals, and I was remarking on people online who want to photograph every meal they have. It needs to be just so perfect. You know, I need to have the best lunch today. I need to have the best dinner. And, no shade on that. That's just not how I approach each meal. I'm like, okay, I'm going to eat again. I'm going to eat again. I'm going to eat again. And tomorrow I'm going to eat again, you know, leftovers, this and that. And after each meal, I'm going to be sated to some degree. It might not be the peak meal of my life, but I did nourish myself. And so I would encourage people to have that approach towards sex and sexuality. It's like, it's a fun way to be in the body. We have bodies that feel pleasure. They feel, you know, all kinds of sensation, and it's synergistic or expansive to be doing that with other human beings. Whether or not you take your clothes off or not, you can be intimate and close to people, feel connection, feel playfulness, fun. You can also explore other emotions that come up. If there's grief or sadness in your heart and you really connect to another human being, either with sex or outside of sex, that's transformative. And so like taking off the table, like this needs to be the best flavor each time, or this needs to have the best texture, or it needs to look good. It's just like, I'm going to do this. This is what it is for me this time. And then I'm going to do it again. And that's what it's going to be for me that time. Sometimes I'm going to eat a bagel. It's going to be a little stale. But after I finish eating it, I'll be full for now, you know, and maybe next time I'll have a delicious vegan filet mignon or something.
But that's allowing yourself to have breadth and depth and texture of experience sexually, which kind of makes me think about the question that I asked you. Why are we like this, Calvin? Like, why is there so much pressure? Why are the scripts around sex so intense? And as you were talking, I'm like, oh, this is like good old fashioned perfectionism. And like perfectionism is white supremacy, patriarchy, capitalism. It is a system of control, right? It's highly conditional love, care, connection, and intention.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm like a Buddhist therapist, so I'm just going to say causes and conditions. That's your answer to the why. And we could get into naming it more. I think for me, in my work, usually the why is less important than what we do after that, you know? But you named it. Patriarchy, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, racism, colonialism, all these things that create the family unit, they create the like monogamous marriage, patriarchy. All of that's going to get in the way of actual human connection.
And then the sense of scarcity.
Absolutely.
That is going to mean that because I think most people, when they think about perfectionism around sex, it's perfectionism around their partner's experience, not their own experience, right? I guess maybe it cuts both ways, but I think it's very common for people to be like, like you were saying, like, don't fail, like, make this be a good experience for the other person. And like, obviously, like, being conscientious about your partner's experience is like important, but to the detriment of your own, or if that's like going to feel like the failure point for you. And then afterwards, you're going to be like evaluating, like, was that good enough for them? Like, where is that coming from? It's probably coming from a place of like good enough that they will like want to be with me more.
Yeah.
Or like
they won't leave me.
Yeah. They won't leave me. And like, that's that sort of scarcity mindset that like maybe, is rooted in the idea
No
that
stress.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like I'm feeling my heart.
Right. Now
Sorry.
everybody take your clothes off.
Welcome to my world. Yeah. How sexy is all that?
Well, it actually it makes you think that probably you're a very responsive and attentive lover, that you're concerned with the other person's experience. And that's not a bad
confirm,
thing.
yeah.
Love that. And that's actually not necessarily the norm, as far as like gender stereotypes. Like, some people really are. I actually think about this with gay sex, with like the kinds of gay sex I've been having more recently with men is like, there is more each person for themselves, and the expectation that everybody's here to have fun and do what they want. And you can ask for what you want and get it. And you can sort of take what you want and get it, within consent. And, once one person's done, they can just be done. And it's not a disappointment. And I wonder if some of that is just like, there is more sex happening that's casual between guys or something. I haven't figured it out yet.
Or maybe the stakes just feel a little bit lower because of that plentifulness or something.
Could be, yeah.
That's really interesting. That was kind of one of the things I just wanted to be talking about today in general is like, what can sort of people in straight relationships like learn from queer relationships or take from that? Yeah. And I agree that it is a cliche. I mean, I'm always kind of like trying to think through this because there is this sort of foundational cliche that like in straight relationships, men are less, are like more sort of selfish and less concerned with their partner's experience. But I think that like that has sort of recently been inverted into this thing that is like men are overly concerned with their partner's experience, but it's actually still kind of about them.
It's invulnerable. I think like this, what we were talking about in the last episode, if it's okay for me to jump in. Is...
No, I'll be talking about women's experience of having sex with the men. Thank you very much. So, no. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Since you and I opened up, like I would say, I had kind of limited sexual experiences in my 20s because you and I got into a monogamous relationship like pretty early on, like in our mid 20s. But those experiences were not ones of like attunement to my body or pleasure. And I was just like, okay, yes, that's what's happening. And while I was queer and I did have like queer sexual experiences, they were like very closeted. So I think that influenced how I felt about them and how much I even engaged with them. And then when we opened up 5 years ago, the experience I more commonly had with men was one where they were like so concerned about my positive experience with them that it actually created a different type of pressure. And it felt and still feels like hard to figure out how to create some conditions where they can feel vulnerable with me in the same way and like let themselves center their own pleasure. So it's kind of an interesting, I don't know.
Well, and what's more vulnerable than just like going for yours and being like, I'm doing what I want, what feels good to me.
Well, I've heard that the best sex, this is something I read somewhere, you have to find the source, but the best sex is when each person is seeking what they want most. And that you meet it somewhere and you create something together about what you both most desire.
Okay, but then there's like this sort of cliche or like that's like a very high bar, right? So if that's always like the the bar. Like, I feel like TV sex or like movie sex is like that. They're like this person over here and this, and what they happen to want the same thing. And it's like they've been holding back and then they like smash together
Oh my
and
God.
transcendent, whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
And that's like kind of what porn is trying to show a lot too.
Yeah.
But that's not like, it's not going to be every time, like you're saying, right?
If ever.
Yeah, like it could be what I want most in the moment is to like mess around for a little bit, you know, and like if I just show up with that energy and the other person is like, I really want to get off, like we could have a great time together, you know, as long as, but like you mentioned, Sarah, just now about like having a partner who's like, I really want to give you something. I really want to give you pleasure, you know, or whatever that is. I really want to give you an orgasm. That can feel like a lot of pressure. And in those conversations with that kind of person, what I feel like I've realized is people want to, like, it's fun to have sex with somebody who's really turned on and desiring. Like, most people want that. Mm-hmm. And so that's, I think, what people are talking about when they're like, I want to give you pleasure. It's like, yeah, I get turned on giving someone pleasure. Like, I get turned on when you get turned on, when I get turned on, when you get turned on, you know, like, we both want to do this. Mm-hmm. You know, it brings me satisfaction to, like, feel you get, like, lit up, right? And I think that's what you were talking about, the guys who are like, can I give you this? Mm-hmm. And it's like, sometimes it gets into a little impasse when it's like, this is a sex podcast, right? We could,
absolutely.
We
always have the E next to our little podcast.
Great, like the word blowjob isn't gonna.
No,
not gonna shock
it would be
anybody.
Amazing to have you come up with something that we didn't feel like.
Thank you. Okay, so like giving someone a blowjob or oral sex or whatever is sort of like, it seems like you're giving one person pleasure, but how many people as the blowjob giver are getting turned on? Mm-hmm. Like that's. Hopefully that's happening to anybody who's giving a blowjob, or at least they want to do that. And that's where the energy lives. And like the person receiving the blowjob or oral sex is like, they're also receiving pleasure, but sometimes that pleasure is how much the person is enjoying doing it. So you can't just like parse out who's giving and receiving. You know, that's impossible.
You can't parse out who's giving and receiving, and you also can't expect that it's just going to be like planets colliding in a perfect explosion of reciprocal pleasure, you know? Yeah. And it's like, we have to like feed and grow these things. We have to be able to identify the experience of pleasure in ourselves, both the giving and receiving, and like name it and grow it with partners. I think that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask an off-script question just about how do you talk about with your clients about like affirmation around these things, like in couples, how important do you think it is for them to be, or like what are the ways for them to be sort of like affirming for each other what is going well, I guess, or vice versa, maybe what is not going well? But
that's so personally stylistic because some people are more verbal than others. Some people are more touch oriented. So I think having a conversation where you give each other your decoder ring, like when I do this, it means this, or when I say this, it means this, or the other person says, I need to hear this to know that you care about me or like what I did. You know, like some people will be like, just, if you like it, just say yes, you know, or yes, daddy, or whatever, you know, whatever you're And then, you know, you have, you know, we're a little bit playing, right? We're playing games with each other, we're playing house, right? We're playing bedroom, whatever you want to call it. Like these are all games we play as adults with each other. And so we can give each other lines to say. So I think a little bit of coaching about what affirmations actually hit the mark, right? And the other thing is like, I was a young out queer person and I listened to the show that was on the radio in Seattle in the late 90s called Savage Love Live. It's,
yeah.
Oh, yes.
But, you know, I wasn't comfortable talking about sex for a long time. And so I wanted to be, though. And so I was just like, I'm just going to force myself to talk about this as much as I can. And so the question about like how to talk about affirmations with your partner, and what I got from that is like, how to talk about sex before and during and after.
I was thinking of after, but I appreciate the before and during.
Well, I was thinking mostly of after too. Like over the years, I've realized I actually do like to kind of talk about it at the end, like what was nice, you know, what was interesting. And that you have to have that conversation gently because you'd never want to give a bunch of feedback, right? It's not time for feedback.
Here's my score sheet.
Yeah. No. Like everybody was just like open-hearted, maybe literally naked.
Yeah.
Right.
So like,
Peak vulnerability.
Yeah.
keep any kind of feedback like very, very minimal. Do not give your opinion about the technique or anything.
Yeah.
You know, share things you liked, share things you might want to try next time, you know, like be gentle, you know.
Yeah.
Use
But it seems like
touch.
having those conversations is important.
I think so. And like warming up to it slowly, like if you're just getting to know someone, you don't need to have like a 30-minute
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
But like after sex, I think it is nice to say like, oh, I liked when we tried this, or, you know, I wasn't sure how I felt about that at first, but actually it turns out it was interesting and maybe we could try it again, you know?
Yeah. Let's talk about the idea of chemistry
Oh, good.
and like inherent chemistry between people. Do you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that and say, like, it's okay to not know things. It's okay to be learning. And I think that's, again, a cultural struggle in a lot of ways where there's not a lot of spaces, especially as we become adults, where it's okay to be like, not good at something, you know, and not know how to do something yet. And
I mean, at 15, I thought I was ready to have sex and that I should know how to do it. Like, I came out of the
Right.
gate with
Yeah.
those ideas. And that's
That's
ludicrous. No, I wasn't good at it. And it was not fun. You know, it was new, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and what's harder than like having a growth experience with somebody, I guess on either side, but like, you know, being with somebody and them being like learning something new or like growing around it.
And I think that's a very like straight sex script, is that you arrive at some place where you are good at sex.
Yeah.
And then you proceed to perform that good sex on people.
Oh, yeah, right. We were talking about technique and is that good sex, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get into it more.
Yeah. And like to what end?
Right. And why are you doing that?
Yeah. Yeah.
But this question of chemistry, I didn't want to derail that. I think that's a great one, and it is kind of relevant to what we're talking about here. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think about that? The idea of sort of there being inherent chemistry between people, because I think as we're talking about like this growth, between even like two specific people around their sexual relationships, like, you know, we're talking on the last episode about, partner specific learning and like learning like what works for the other people and all of this sort of like communication and experience based stuff. But then there's this idea that like you come in and like the first time you'll just know if you have chemistry or not.
That's a very tricky one.
Yeah.
The chemistry piece, because there's a lot of research done on what like is that initial compelling draw of people. There was a study, I'd have to look it up, but like somebody with an alcoholic parent walks into a room and immediately they see somebody, they're like, that person lights me up. That person's probably an alcoholic.
Yeah.
You know?
Ding, ding, ding.
Right? And no shade on any person in there. It's just like we have life experiences and some of those include, you know, intense childhoods or whatever. That's chemistry.
Right.
You know?
That's your nervous system, like at its most elemental level, being lit up by something that feels familiar.
Well, it's lit up because it's spicy. Is that a good spicy? TBD, you know? So sometimes I'm working with people who have been in a series of relationships and they're like, I just want to have a new kind of relationship. I don't know why I keep having the same one over and over again. So in that experience, usually my advice is to slow things down way down, because whatever is lighting you up initially, getting you into that relationship, we have to skip that and get to some new place. So we can't rely on chemistry because it hasn't been a good picker, if that makes sense. It hasn't been a good chooser.
Yeah.
We've got to diversify our pickers a little bit.
Yeah, so a way to do that is to mess with the variables. So time is a variable, and what you do with your time is the other variable. And of course, there's endless variables, but those are the two most basic ones. So like waiting to have sex, does that make sense?
Yeah. I was asking you what you do with your time, what you mean by that.
Yeah, like, so, you know, if you are used to like having that hot flaming chemistry right away and you meet, you have sex the first date, you start texting right away, you go on your second date within a week, you meet each other's friends within the month, you meet each other's families within 2 months. That's a certain kind of pacing. And I'll bet money that you actually don't know each other hardly at all, but you've done all of this like building and connecting. And then you find yourself in a committed relationship within 6 to 8 months, you know? And I think the research shows like you really don't know each other hardly at all for the first 2 years, you know? And like, then you start getting a little deeper and you reach a crossroads at 2 years where you decide if you want to go further.
Yeah. What do you think why do you think it's 2 years? Like, is it the time in which, I would imagine it's like something transformative or like big or meaningful happens in your lives as individuals, maybe?
No, it's like the end of the honeymoon.
So
for some people,
outer limits of the
Got it. Yeah.
It's if you're having a relationship that's relatively peaceful, you'll hit it within 1.5 to 2 years. If your relationship is tumultuous from the beginning, call me.
Right. And it's like when your ancestors' children, progeny could walk or whatever, and then it was like okay to like separate. And
I mean, that's a great theory.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I don't know what it is, but yeah, it's like we do have biology, whether you like it or not. We do have like reproductive system, whether you want to use it or not. So that stuff is having a life of its own, unconscious to us.
Yeah,
it's happening. And so there are things that are just set in motion from the beginning.
Yeah. So that's a version of sort of like innate, almost physiological chemistry. And I think that's what I was originally asking about. Was that piece of it, because you will also hear people talk about that.
Innate, because there's always conditions. We're all conditioned from day one.
That's what I was going to say. The relationship escalator perhaps is tied to some sort of like biological impulse that has been specifically cultivated by a culture that is really driving people towards a certain type of relationship for a certain type of reason.
And the culture is built on a collective experience of that as well. But you're saying, it's not like it's impossible to transcend, or it's like an inevitability. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not somebody who, it's hard for me to assume anything is innate. Like, it's impossible in my mind to separate out socialization and enculturation that starts with birth, or even before birth.
And in intergenerational experiences.
Yeah.
Well, and I think my feelings about that are where and how that exists can maybe sometimes be a point of interest, but it's so much smaller than what culture does, what conditions do. Because we know around things like sex and relationships and love, we have examples of different interpretations of that throughout history and culture they're just so diverse and they're so varied that I like that. I find that comforting because it makes me feel like anything is possible and we're not like stuck somewhere.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you guys about that. I think the reason that I was going back to that was because of that, again, that like sort of innate physical chemistry that sometimes between two individual people will get described. And like what you were speaking to before was sort of like almost like a psychological one, right? Yeah. Based on our experiences. Do you think that the physical one exists?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, when it comes to chemistry, it's like every person is dealing with different things. So some people have a hard time having emotional intimacy. Some people have a hard time keeping things going for a while, like they get bored or something.
Yeah.
Some people can't get comfortable until they've known somebody for a long time. So everybody's working with a slightly different thing. And so when it comes to that chemistry question, it depends on where you're at with that. So when I'm working with people, it's like, what's your usual practice? And let's try something different. So if you're somebody who's like, it takes me 6 months to know whether or not I want to go on a date with somebody, right? Or like, I have to be friends first. That's all well and good. No criticisms for that at all. Like, that's a nice way to connect with people. And if you want to try something new, maybe we would figure out like just trying casual sex one time. Or, maybe it's not like you don't want to try casual sex. Maybe you want to just like hold hands and kiss earlier and try something different out. See if you can get a new chemistry experience. Or if you're in the other boat and you're typically like, fast, you're like turned on right away, let's just hook up and we'll figure the rest out later kind of energy. And that's can be very fun, right? There's the excitement of it, there's a ramp up, and it's like, we're gonna do it, right? for that person, maybe if they're like wanting to have different kinds of relationships, or they're realizing, maybe there's something else out there, but I don't know how to get there, then we would work with the time aspect, like don't have sex the first date, or don't take your underwear off for 3 months is a common one that I've used.
You're making me think about 40-year-old virgin, where he's like, we're gonna go on 50 dates before we have sex.
Yeah, totally. Something a little bit dialed back from there, but like, you know, I don't know about you, but you can do a lot with your underwear on. You know?
Yes,
like
you can.
I don't know about you, but
there's a lot of fun and play that can happen if we actually just take off the table having an orgasm, or having penetrative sex, or even like typical oral or hand job sex, you know, just like take that off the plate and like see what else you could do for a few months before you decide you want to go all the way. Because that once you go all the way, there is even more biological timeline ticking away. There's something about it that once you once you're totally naked with each other and you like merge your bodies in that special way, you're literally inside of each other. There is a new timeline going on. Like, I don't know what it is. It's not the same exactly for everybody. Some people run screaming. They're like, oh my God, you've really seen me. Now I have to hide. Right. But other people are like, you've really seen me. We're going to be together forever.
right.
Or we're going to do everything together. Or you're my person now.
Or I just start living in a liminal state of constant anxiety.
Yeah.
Does
Does it start at that point?
It starts at that point. Yeah. And it's something that's
It's a moment of penetration.
pretty much, here comes liminal anxiety.
Sexy.
Yay. But with this idea of playing with timeline and chemistry, I was wondering if you'd be up for sharing the anecdote with string bean, because that really stuck with me.
So yeah, with my long-term relationship, my current partner, we've been together for 15 years. And at the beginning of our relationship, I'd been out of a very difficult breakup, my own fault, difficult. But I was at a point of reckoning, Saturn return style, you know, late 20s. So I was highly motivated to do something different. String Bean had been through something similar and was having a period of celibacy. So we first met as friends, and he kind of avoided me for a while. And that was like February. And by October that year, we had decided to go out on a date. So we waited after we went on a few dates, and it was like fun. We'd already been friends throughout the summer and like done some game playing, just like chill stuff, but there was no escalation, even though if I could feel there was something happening, you know?
Game playing, like, you're talking about
like
Catan or
cribbage.
Like okay, cribbage.
Yeah.
That could mean a lot of different things.
Cribbage for money.
Cribbage for money.
And yeah, I think we're both playing around with these ideas about slowing down, not getting on an escalator. So one of the piece of advice we got from one of his teachers was to wait, I think she said 4 months before having sex. I think we waited 2 months. And so we had a lot of fun doing all kinds of other stuff. And I think the part that maybe is meaningful to share is like the first time we had like pants off sex all the way, it was a little stressful and like very like quick and like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. Because it was, even though we'd waited 2 months, it was still like a jump forward, like a leap. It was like we entered a new space and we'd had all this sweet connection, sexy connection. There was a lot of like sexual energy happening. But like, you know, sometimes like if we had a sleepover, one of us would be like, I'm going to go to the bathroom and just jerk off. I'll be like, you know, we weren't doing that yet. Yeah. And so then when we did quote unquote
it's so hot.
That's fun,
really
right?
hot.
Yeah.
That's such a good idea. Noted.
Right. Building up the desire.
You like have a glass on the door.
Yeah. So then when we finally did it, there was a lot of like, we got to make it. It's got to be something. And I'll just say for myself, it was hard for me to be present and enjoy it. It was like, oh my God, we're doing it. And it was an eye-opener because I had, first of all, never waited to have sex. And it surprised me even after this connection time. Like, I'm somebody who's like struggles with emotional intimacy. So it's easier for me to have connections with strangers, kind of like go deeper with people I don't know. And like the clothes off, nakedness, open emotionality of having sex in a relationship is a lot for me personally. Like, that anxiety that you mentioned, Sarah, and just like, like pleasing my partner, all these things come into play when it's not just casual.
You can do it casually, but then once it's inside of an actual relationship. Then
I kind of like, am I supposed to be thinking about me or you or what,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So we like, that was really beautiful. And we also was a monogamous relationship, like maybe the two of you started, which for me was a huge relief. I'd had a series of difficult open relationships, mostly due to my lack of skill. And so it was a relief to just say, we're together. I'm not trying to do anything else. And we were monogamous for about 10 years like that. Before we opened up.
Yeah.
And having that period of like going slow at the beginning, I think really set the stage for approaching sex with play in mind, with connection in mind, and not having an agenda, and having some other menu items on the, some other items on the menu, sex menu, if you will, that wasn't just like, I'm going to fuck you and you're going to get off, or, just like, just the usual acts, if you know what I mean.
The stale bagel, the vegan filet
Yes.
The stale bagel really sounds like a move.
Sorry.
I love it so
I mean,
much.
gluten-free bagel.
It's also stale.
So coming back from the bathroom break, one of the things that it's like this is something that I keep circling around because it like stresses me out, and we've talked about it a little bit, like casually on our walks and stuff. This idea of people equating good sex with orgasming, and like how much emphasis is put on that. And this is a little bit like my queer imposter syndrome showing up. I think I internally have this idea that like sex between men and women is like that, but like queer sex, people are more liberated from that. And even my own experience with queer sex, that's not necessarily true. And I'm like, but I'm probably just bringing some weird straight energy into this. So I was just curious if you would reflect on that, and like if that script shows up for everybody, and just, I don't know, thoughts about that.
That's interesting. When I was first as a sexual person, someone not having an orgasm was a failure. And nowadays, it doesn't feel that way. It's like, have sex for as long as you want. If someone has an orgasm, awesome. If they have a second one, awesome. If they don't have one, awesome. Did everybody have a good time? Cool. So I can relate to sort of the cultural messaging that might be really strong if you, like, I think being queer for me is a really beautiful experience of realizing from an early age I didn't have to follow the rules. And yet it took me many decades to still get out from under those rules. And I'm still in the process of unfolding that completely. But that like need to get an orgasm, I can totally feel the pressure of like, well, not only to give, quote unquote, give somebody an orgasm. I don't think I'm actually that powerful, but like the other side of it, a lot of pressure for me is like, can I have one? Any amount of pressure on that, I'm just like, I'm never going to come. The way I get out from under that, just as an aside, is like, if I feel like I can't come, but like I know that it would feel nice, of course I'm into that, and I know the other person wants that from me, I'll be like, I'm never gonna come. And then usually within 50 minutes I do.
That's a good cheat. I like that.
Yeah, because it's just like, it's too much pressure. And like, can I just like be in the moment, the sensory moment, the sensations, and actually feel them?
You're saying like, and once you sort of write it off in your own mind even, then you'll be more sort of attuned to it actually happening.
Yeah, actually see if what's happening is pleasant and pleasurable, and like just enjoy it for what it is. And then usually that big O just creeps on out, as soon as I relax, to be honest. Yeah. Because there's a lot of like physiological cheats one can do to come soon, like if you tense your body, or you like tense your muscles, or you push in certain ways, you can sort of force an orgasm to come sooner. I don't know if have you experienced that?
Could you write these down on the sex menu that you were talking about before?
Yeah, I mean, like another, we could study tantra and all kinds of different things, but like there's different kinds of orgasms you have. Like if your body's really relaxed, you can have a different kind of orgasm. Like if someone's like Or if you're tense, you can have a different kind of orgasm, or you can like move your legs to make it happen. I think about this a lot with like, quote unquote, the top or the bottom. Like the top is usually doing a lot more things, moving around and stuff, and how difficult for me it is to come while moving at the same time. I'm like, wow, people who are topping are incredible. Coming at the same time as thrusting. Wow, you know? But I think, you know, there's just different kinds of orgasms one can have. And having one where you just like totally relax in the body, I would encourage everybody to try that at least once, because it's like a different experience than like tensing up. There's no good or bad here, right?
That's interesting. And you would say that probably most of us have trained ourselves to do like a tensing up to encourage orgasm?
I don't know, actually. That's just been my path. I went, you know, but I had a girlfriend when I was 21 or so, and she was like, if you tense up at all, I'm going to stop touching you.
Whoa.
It was hot. She taught me a lot about sex.
Yeah.
That was fun, because I realized that there was a whole other spectrum of things that could happen.
Cool.
Yeah.
And a lot of what I'm hearing is throughout this is like a kind of gentle piece of advice. It's like, whatever is your pattern, give yourself permission to try something else.
Exactly.
You know, give yourself permission to interrupt it. Give yourself permission to have a new experience. Like, take that leap of faith, whether it's like connecting emotionally with a man, or letting yourself not come, or being bad at sex, or not making a beeline for the person you normally would in a crowded room.
Yeah. My friend Celine says her body's like an instrument, and she wants to know every note that it can make.
Yeah.
I'm like, hell yeah, that's fucking awesome. Just
cool.
experience all of what life has to offer.
Yeah. Yeah. That is really cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so before we let you go, we should pay our poly dues and talk about that a little bit.
I don't want to go.
Yeah.
I know. I don't want you to go either.
Yeah, we can come back. We can do a 10-hour episode. That's
definitely
fine.
The
come
first
back.
hour was like fluff, and now
Yeah.
we're really getting to it.
I know.
Now we're in it, yeah.
Next time we'll set aside 4 hours.
We're getting to know each other with partner-specific learning. No, so I wanted to I feel like I saw something on your Instagram that kind of implied, and this was a very like casual watch of it, so I won't hold you to it. But sort of implied that you thought that like open relationships were, it seemed like you had a very like sort of positive idea around them, as, you know, a potential good thing for like everybody to think about. I don't know if I got that exactly right, but I'm just curious, like, how you sort of think about polyamory in your personal experience as being monogamous for a long time, as you talked about, but also like in relationship to your clients.
Yeah, in my relationship when I was very monogamous for those years, I was very socially promiscuous. We had a lot of freedom and flexibility with friendship. There was no jealousy around friendship. And so I realized in that process, like, it's like I'm an open person. I love connecting. And the reason why I wanted to open it up with sex and romance was that I wanted to practice that compartmentalization I had around like either something's friendship or it's a sexual partner. And that was like a holdover from being scared of leading people on or giving people the wrong idea. Like if we're close, then they'll think we're dating, and then I'll have to set them straight, and then it'll end the friendship.
And like distance yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I had a lot of aversion and fear of intimacy and affection with my friends because I thought it would ruin the relationship. And I just wanted to get a little more free and open that up. So I think to me, that's what open relationship includes. I hope everybody's relationship has openness in it, because like, I think it's fair to say like newness brings life into the connection, you know, like people ought to go out in the world and have new experiences and talk about them, come back and have some separate time and come back together, share what you've learned. Whether you do that with other partners or whether you do that by taking a class or taking a trip, that's up to you. But to me, there's a quality of openness of the heart, openness to other human beings that is part of our like political and cultural healing, right? That goes beyond the nuclear family and the idea that you should get something from just your blood family or your married partner. and instead open that to all beings in your community, to have like that kind of friendship and love and potential for romantic dedication to all beings, whether or not you have sex with them, you know, and if you have sex with them, cool.
I love that. That comes back to this, like where we started, the idea of like the crush. What is the crush? And that feeling of being alive and open in so many spaces and in so many different orientations towards people.
Yeah, and we're living in a time when a lot of people are very heartbroken.
Yeah.
And the capacity for being open and loving is understandably interrupted and obscured. And so waking up to that or opening it up again can take some acknowledgement of that pain and suffering that's happening. And being with other human beings in a affirming, consensual, supportive way is, to me, the healing path. One of the healing paths, I could say, but I think encompasses most of the healing paths: community and family and connection.
Yeah, connection, meaning together. Yeah.
And for some people, sex is the path to connection and community. You know, that's, I think, why poly relationships are so like in right now, or people are really open to talking about it, is because people are like, hey, the old way isn't exactly working, right? We're living longer. We like, you know, we have resources to share with other people. We are allowed to have friendship and connections outside of our marriages or partnerships. Like, why not open it up to new partners? Why not make a community through love and lovers? I mean, that's an old gay adage, like an army of lovers or something like that.
Yeah,
You
right.
know, that's a beautiful idea that, you know, we have sex or we have a romantic connection, and then we might not continue exactly in that way, but we're still like siblings.
Yeah.
We're still connected.
We're connected. Yeah.
I mean, siblings in a revolutionary, expansive way.
Yeah.
And I love just like honestly letting it end there. And I know that folks often come to this podcast looking for advice on how to step into polyamory, open relationships. If they're doing that for the first time, they want to experiment with something that feels different.
Yeah.
Like, what is just some words of encouragement or advice you might have for them?
Woo-wee. Thank you for letting me share some advice. I had the opportunity to open my relationship. I had just come back from a meditation retreat with my boyfriend, and I was like, I think maybe we should think about opening our relationship. That was 2019 in December.
Perfect. Yeah.
Which was actually perfect because, you know, March rolled around, lockdown with COVID started, and we didn't act on any of our ideas for the next year and a half. So unlike previous attempts to open a relationship, there was no urgency because we were just lying around talking to each other. We did a little bit of online chatting with strangers, and that was enough content to kind of light up the jealousy, light up the fear. So then we could talk through all the scenarios, like, what if I did this? And then he came back, and we got to role play things for that 18 months that allowed us to just like slowly ramp up. And I'm sure if lockdown wasn't happening, I would have done something crazy and rushed and then been like, I'm sorry, I did this thing and I'm sorry, I'll never do it again, which is how I'd been before. And I would sell myself out, sell myself short, either, you know, obscure the truth in some way because I couldn't own up to my desires or anything. But instead I had 18 months with my boyfriend. We talked about everything. We talked to other people. We saw what was out there. It was just a nice, slow ramp up. So to me, that's really special. And I don't know how I would recreate that today, but something about having, separating the decision to do it from talking about it. Like, and that's probably a concept maybe you've explored a little bit as far as like when people are talking about relationship agreements and how you're going to relate to each other. I think it's really nice to separate whether or not you decide to do it. That's a separate conversation than what's going to happen. Like, talk about all the ideas, talk about what you think you might want to do, the mechanics of it for a long time before you decide for sure you're going to do it. Have the decision be separate.
Make it be like almost a hypothetical conversation.
Absolutely, because otherwise you're proving something. You're like trying to make a point.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would drop trying to make a point to just be like, all right, let's assume we're going to do it. How are we going to do it? Let's just talk about it ad nauseum till we're sick of talking about it.
Yeah. That's
Slow way down.
Yeah, actually, my boyfriend and I got a relationship astrology chart read back then, and the person was like, she was giving us advice about opening up. And she was like, talk about it so much. She specifically for me to become the oversharer, because I'm a little bit less of the oversharer. I'm the opposite of oversharing. So for me, my task was to say things that I felt like were pointless to say. Just report everything. And that was really good advice for me.
Yeah. It's, again, it just mirrors what you've been saying, like slow way down, change like your relationship to time, remove as much pressure as possible, give yourself permission to try something different outside of your sort of like habitual ways of doing
It's
things.
funny because it's the opposite of what we did.
Yep, 100%.
At the same time, we were like, yeah, COVID, it'll be fine.
I mean, and in retrospect, whatever, we did it. It worked in a way, but like we did some damage that I think we could have avoided.
Yes, and we were like, definitely had those conversations together, or like decided we were going to do it first and then figured out how.
Yeah, like there's no wrong way, you know. You asked my advice,
Yes,
and like all things being equal, and if you have the space and time to do things, but I understand that's not how life works.
I would have appreciated that advice 5 years ago.
Yes.
Where were you then?
I was in my house.
Yeah, right. Where we probably should have been. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah,
Calvin.
thanks, Alex.
It's been wonderful.
Thanks, Sarah. So happy to be here and get to share my ideas.
And thank you for listening to Mistakes Were Made. We'll be back in a few weeks with what I think will be our season finale. I'm glancing sideways at the producer for affirmation of this. Yeah. And in the meantime, find us on Instagram at MistakesCast and subscribe and like and tell your friends. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.